This video is going to be a review of the creation documentary called Life Story. My name is Greg. I am a fourth-year biotechnology student, officially now. I'll be starting my fourth year of studies this fall and doing a lot of research over the summer with my favorite professor. So anyway, Life Story is a creation documentary that talks about ecology. The first part of the documentary focused on coral reefs, the second part focused more on African wildlife, and basically the bottom line with this video for me was I thought that it was kind of poorly done. One thing they talked about was how parrotfish will clean the coral reefs by eating the algae, and how people used to think that the fish were actually destroying the reef. But when they took parts of coral reef and kept the parrotfish away from them, they found that the coral reefs became covered in algae and they died. So they ended up finding out that the fish helped the coral and the coral helped the fish. And they ended up talking about a lot about the different interdependencies of different creatures on the planet and in their respective ecosystems, and how they all kind of need each other to survive. This video basically, from that perspective, was alright. I think that they really could have done a better job. My big problem with the video was that their arguments that they presented weren't good. For example, they would present an argument, and it would be an argument that would be like, okay, that might be the case, but I have this, and this question. And there were obvious questions that would come up that any skeptic watching this video would have in their mind. But instead of going really in-depth with the arguments, they just kind of would mention an argument in passing and then keep going. Some of the arguments were good, some of them were bad, most of them were just kind of not bad but poor, and kind of weak. So they would mention, there were a couple times where they mentioned DNA, but they would talk about DNA and then they would just keep on going. And I was like, you really could have gone into more detail. Obviously, you're not going to go into the same type of detail that I will hear in my biotechnology classes or read in a molecular biology textbook. However, you can go into enough detail so that even lay people can handle a lot more detail than what they put in this video. And they really should have added a lot more detail than they did. There was one point where they put an argument in there that, actually there were quite a few arguments in there that I thought were just very bad arguments. For example, they talked about how reptiles allegedly evolved into birds according to evolution. Now, obviously I don't agree with evolution. However, the argument they put forth was that, well, if reptiles evolved into birds, then how come we see both reptiles and birds today? Doesn't this contradict evolution? And no, it does not contradict evolution. From an evolutionary perspective, the reptilian form is a very good form. It's a very successful form. Being cold-blooded, you have a lot of advantages because you have to eat less food. There's a lot of opportunities to survive. Also, not every reptile out there doesn't have the anatomy where it would have the evolutionary potential to become a bird. Snake, for example. This is obviously a wooden snake. There is nothing on here that would be able to develop into wings. This is not going to become. Doesn't really have the potential in the form that it's in to become a bird. Now, maybe later on it might evolve legs and then evolve wings from an evolutionary perspective, and then evolve into a bird from there. But as it is, it really doesn't have a lot of potential to become a bird. It's not on that proper, it doesn't have the proper body parts to experiment with. Now, even if you grant, of course, that one group of reptiles became birds, say it was a group of dinosaurs or a group of tree-dwelling lizards, even if you grant this, that doesn't mean that every group of reptiles out there is going to evolve into birds. Anyway, I think you guys get the idea. But if you're going to talk about the problems with reptiles evolving into birds, the fact that one group of reptiles evolved into birds and the rest didn't is not a problem for evolution. Obviously, I don't agree with evolution, but this is not a problem for evolution. If you're going to talk about the problems with this, talk about having to fundamentally change the skeletal system, fundamentally changing the respiratory system, fundamentally changing the circulatory system, fundamentally changing the nervous system so that every one of these changes is able to be coordinated. If you evolve wings and lungs and things like this, but you don't give the bird the proper brain so it can understand how to fly and doesn't have the instinct to be able to fly, it's not going to do you much good. You're just going to have kind of this dead weight on you. So there's a lot of, and obviously I'm being, even in this video, I am not going to type of detail. You could probably poke holes in what I just said because even I didn't go into much detail. However, if you're going to have a documentary talking about reptiles evolving into birds and talking about the problems with this, you really need to go into detail, and Life Story did not do that. Also, I think that, and there are videos out there that talk about this, so the major part of this video is not talking about problems with reptiles evolving into birds, so please don't completely troll me on that. Anyway, moving on, I thought that this video would get either a D or a C, and that's me being kind of generous. You know what? I might even be tempted to give this thing an F. I thought that this documentary, I thought they presented their case just so poorly, and that's not good. You know, if we're going to when we present our arguments for creation, we have to show that we know what we're talking about. Being a third-year biotech major, obviously I've studied evolution. In general, the general biology class I took, I got 100 on the evolution test, and I'll be obviously studying a lot more about evolution. Now, it doesn't mean that I believe in evolution, it doesn't mean that I agree with it. But if we're going to put together a documentary, we need to have it be accurate. Now, most creation documentaries out there I've seen do a pretty good job. This one, on the other hand, did not. Also, I think one thing that really could have improved this documentary would have been to interview scientists. So, if you have a creation documentary and you're talking about arguments for evolution, or arguments against evolution, having a narrator do this, that might be good. They might present even if they present the argument well and they go into detail with an argument against evolution, it gives you a lot more strength if you have a scientist presenting this argument. It gives a lot more credibility to the video because the scientist, if you have a geneticist, for example, and there's plenty of scientists out there arguing for young Earth creation. I mean, that's a trade secret of the creation versus evolution debate. Most people just assume that a lot of people out there just assume that creationists are liars, and they believe everything they read in the magazines, they believe everything they hear in school, and they never give creation scientists their time of day. They never take the chance to hear the argument, which of course is not the scientific way of doing things. If you're going to be a scientist about investigating creation versus evolution, then you need to hear all sides of the debate. Otherwise, you're not being scientific about it. By no means. So, add scientists to the documentary. Interview scientists. There's plenty of them out there, and I'm sure there are creationist ecologists out there. Go look them up. Have them interviewed for the documentary. They know what they're talking about. This is what they do. This is what they do with their lives, and I'm sure they'll be happy to be interviewed. So, anyway, bottom line with Life Story is I thought it was poorly done. Do I regret watching it? No. And would I regret it? Would I recommend it to another person to watch? If you're already a creationist and you're pretty educated on things, go watch the video. If you're a creationist and you think you're educated, don't watch it. Alright, but if you do watch this video, look up the arguments. Look them up on Answers in Genesis. Look them up on the Institute for Creation Research. These are scientists who spend their entire lives arguing for creation. They know what they're talking about. So you can separate good arguments from bad arguments that way. So yeah, bottom line is I thought this documentary was poorly done. If you want to go check it out, go check it out. But do everyone a favor and do not give this video to skeptics, because honestly, it just makes creationists look bad. And I felt really embarrassed that they put a lot of the nonsense in the video that they did. So anyway, they could really have done a better job. Anyway, check out my website, which is greenslug.com. That's and remember, slug is spelled with 2 G's, so it's GREENSLUGG.com. And also remember, I have the creation search engine on there, so if you want to learn about something in particular, go on there, type in whatever it is into the creation search engine. It's just a modified Google search bar, and you will go only to websites that are. You'll go to websites where you'll have PhD scientists arguing for Young Earth creation, so you can bypass all of the nasty blogs out there. The only blog included in there is my own, and I study this like crazy, so I know what I'm talking about. So, creation search engine on greenslug.com. This is, anyway, shalom. May God bless you all, and have a wonderful day. This is Greg, out.